Mom spots sign on teacher's car, then cops look in her trunk. She knew she was in trouble and it was serious. The police officer made that much clear with his gaze. She heard his authoritative voice and replied with an insistence that there was nothing in her car besides a few empty soda cans and a blanket. The officer had reason to believe otherwise. Employees and parents started to stare at the sight that was going on. In just a few moments, this teacher's life would make a drastic change. Millie Glynn worked hard for her two children, Sean and Molly, both 8 years old. It was hard being a single parent, but she made it work. At the end of the day, they made everything worth it. At least she had a bit of help. Her children's teacher, Miss Smith, always helped out where she could, but she didn't know that the teacher had a secret. Miss Smith was a great teacher. Millie could tell that she was passionate about what she did and loved shaping the minds of her students, but no one knew about the teacher's secret. She was hiding something. It was almost time for summer vacation and the school was buzzing with ecstatic children. Before going to work, Millie dropped her children off. She saw them happily skip together through the main gate. They were growing up fast. Millie put her car in gear and headed off to work. She thought that the day would be just like any other. She didn't know how wrong she was. Millie would often daydream about what her children got up to when they were at school. She didn't ever worry though, since they had Miss Smith to take care of them. But she was unaware of what she found out about her beloved teacher. Miss Smith was covering the tutors with her class. She approached the topics in a very professional yet caring manner. She was different to the other teachers. Miss Smith was loved by all. Even her fellow staff loved her, so when a police officer arrived looking for her, everyone was taken aback. Now that work was finished, it was time for Millie to get her kids from school. She drove on the highway to get back faster. All she wanted was to see their faces after a long day of work. But the sight before her when she arrived at school was something to behold. Millie noticed a note on a car. She could tell that it was her children's teacher's car, but what was on the note? Millie inspected the note closer, and when she read it, she had no choice but to call the authorities. Miss Smith had just finished her last class, and after finishing her cup of coffee, sat back in her chair with satisfaction. Then she heard someone knocking on her door. Before she could reply, a coworker stumbled through the door with alarm on her face. Her coworker quickly told her that an officer of the law had come to talk to her. He was standing out in the hallway waiting. Miss Smith felt her heart skip a beat. She immediately went into the hall to see her boyfriend Lewis, talking with the officer. Had something bad happened? She didn't know what to think. With a lump in her throat, Miss Smith asked her boyfriend Lewis what was wrong, but he just looked at the floor, avoiding all eye contact with the worried teacher. "Hi, Miss Smith," the police officer said, his tone authoritative. "I'm Officer Jones." Miss Smith looked at the officer with fear in her eyes. She had no idea that in just 15 minutes her entire world would be turned upside down. Officer Jones asked Miss Smith if she had her car keys, which stumped Miss Smith even more. She retrieved them from her designer handbag and dangled them in front of the officer. "Good, now follow me out into the parking lot," Officer Jones commanded Miss Smith. The two went out into the front by her car, her boyfriend keeping his distance. She didn't understand. Was her license expired? While out in the parking lot, Officer Jones told Miss Smith his police dog had sensed something strange near her car, which meant he had to check her trunk. Nothing made sense to Miss Smith anymore, but in a few minutes, everything would fall into place, and Miss Smith would learn the truth surrounding her car and the police officer. Miss Smith felt that she was going to get a ticket or worse. She could see it in the officer's piercing eyes, his wide, imposing stance, and his authoritative tone, but she couldn't understand what she had done wrong. There was nothing more in the car than just a few empty water bottles and a fluffy blanket, right? Miss Smith gave the police officer permission to unlock the car and take a look inside. Within a matter of seconds, she watched the officer step inside her car, and she prepared for the worst, but she had no idea what was about to happen next. Miss Smith didn't know what to expect as she watched the police officer look around in her trunk. With every move the officer made, Miss Smith's heartbeat skipped a beat. Then suddenly, her boyfriend Lewis looked at Miss Smith with his bright blue eyes and pulled her in close. This brought some relief and comfort to the worried teacher. She so badly wanted him to save her from whatever trouble was ahead. but this was going to be far from easy. Miss Smith could feel tears welling up in her eyes and an uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach as she proclaimed her innocence to her boyfriend. But then suddenly the officer who was looking through Miss Smith's trunk let out a gasp and he stumbled back. What had he found? Just as Miss Smith was about to race over to her trunk to see what was inside, suddenly her boyfriend pulled her back. "What's wrong?" she asked, turning to face him. She saw fear in his eyes and she felt a shiver up her spine. What her boyfriend was about to do was going to change her life forever. Miss Smith saw the officer pull something out of the trunk, saying, "That's what I thought." She couldn't see what it was, but the next thing that happened made her fear the worst. "You're going to do life for this," said the officer as he made Lewis drop to his knees and put his hands behind his back. Then he handcuffed him. Miss Smith's worry was mounting by the second. The officer had asked her to stand in front of Lewis as he went back to his patrol car to get his evidence camera. Reluctantly, she complied, and then her world was turned upside down. Miss Smith darted from her boyfriend to the officer and back. Then she watched as Lewis pulled his hands out from behind him and placed them in front of her, holding a ring. She gasped and brought her hands to her face. The officer who was filming everything started laughing. This had all been a ruse. Miss Smith's boyfriend got down on one knee and asked the question that all women long to be asked. "My love, will you marry me?" he asked, while his Hollywood smile sparkled in the light. He pulled out a beautiful ring and tears of happiness streamed down Miss Smith's face. "Yes," she screamed. She hugged her boyfriend, now fiancé, but Smith was confused. Was there even anything in her trunk? While the newly engaged couple hugged and embraced each other, Officer Jones and Millie, who had been a part of this incredible plan all along, clapped for the happy couple. But Millie knew she had to tell Miss Smith the truth. She pulled her aside and revealed everything. You see, when Millie arrived at school earlier in the day, she saw a note on Miss Smith's car that stopped her cold. It put things totally in perspective. It made such an impact that she called up Miss Smith's boyfriend and told him of her plan. But what did this note say exactly? The note said, "Love and live every day like it's your last." And it was a motto Millie lived by. She knew that Miss Smith and her boyfriend were meant to be. They just needed a bit of pushing, that's all. Once Miss Smith's boyfriend agreed to propose, Millie then asked a friend on the force to join in on this elaborate plan. And it was safe to say this plan sure worked.